At the will reading, my uncle leaned back in his chair, folded his arms, and said, "Let's skip the formalities. We all know she's not in it." The lawyer adjusted his glasses. I smiled. "Lawyer?" I said calmly. "You really don't know?" The room froze. My name is Camille Mercer, and that was the moment my uncle realized he'd miscalculated everything. My grandfather, Henry Mercer, built Mercer Industrial Supply from nothing. One warehouse, one truck. 40 years later, it was a regional empire supplying construction firms across 3 states. My father was supposed to inherit it, but my father died when I was 19. After that, my uncle Raymond stepped in as temporary acting director. Temporary turned into permanent. At least that's what he believed. For 15 years, I stayed quiet. I finished law school, then an MBA, not because I needed degrees, but because I needed leverage. Uncle Raymond always treated me like a sentimental obligation. He'd pat my shoulder at Christmas and say, "Your grandfather was proud of you." But when business decisions were made, I wasn't invited. When dividends were distributed, mine were reinvested. When I asked questions, he'd say, "This isn't your lane." I stopped asking. I started watching. Grandpa never trusted blindly. 2 years before he passed, he asked me to visit him every Sunday afternoon. We didn't talk about family. We talked about contracts, trusts, clauses, voting rights, control structures. He told me something once that I never forgot. Control isn't about ownership, it's about timing. The day he died, Raymond moved fast. He positioned himself as the natural successor. My cousins backed him. He restructured departments, hired new executives loyal to him, and assumed the will would reflect that, which is why he was so confident at the reading. The lawyer cleared his throat. "As per the final amended will of Henry Mercer," Raymond interrupted. "Let's not waste time. The board already approved the transition." The lawyer frowned slightly. "There are additional documents." Raymond waved dismissively. "Fine, read it." The lawyer began. 51% controlling shares of Mercer Industrial Supply shall transfer to— Raymond straightened in his chair. "The Mercer Family Trust." He smiled. "Which I manage." The lawyer continued. "With sole voting authority assigned to the designated trustee." Raymond nodded confidently. "And that trustee is?" The lawyer looked up. "Camille Mercer." Silence. Absolute silence. My uncle blinked twice. "That's not possible." The lawyer adjusted the folder. "It is. The trust amendment was executed 2 years ago." Raymond's voice sharpened. "I never signed anything like that." "You weren't required to." He turned toward me slowly. "You knew?" I folded my hands on the table. "Sunday afternoons," I said softly. My cousins started whispering. Raymond stood up. "This is manipulation." "No," I replied evenly. "It's structure." The lawyer continued reading. "The trustee shall retain sole authority over executive appointments, dividend distribution, and asset liquidation." Raymond's face turned red. "You're 29 years old. You've never run a warehouse." "I've reviewed every contract you've signed for the last 5 years." He froze, because he knew that was true. Grandpa had quietly granted me observer access to board minutes long before his health declined, and I'd noticed things. Overpriced vendor agreements, consulting fees routed to shell companies, performance bonuses during declining revenue years. I waited until the lawyer finished. Then I slid a second folder across the table. "Forensic audit summary," I said calmly. Raymond didn't touch it, but his attorney did. Pages flipped, numbers highlighted, wire transfers circled in red. "You embezzled from a company you assumed you'd fully inherit," I said quietly. "That's defamation," he snapped. "No," the lawyer replied carefully. "It's evidence." The room felt smaller now. My cousin Daniel whispered, "Dad?" Raymond looked cornered. "You set me up." "No," I corrected. "You underestimated me." The truth was simple. Grandpa had suspected Raymond's ambition, not his intelligence, his greed. So he designed a trust structure that required dual authorization for major asset sales. Authorization Raymond never realized he didn't fully control. 2 weeks before Grandpa passed, he executed the final amendment, naming me trustee. He told me not to confront anyone. Timing, he reminded me. So I waited. At the will reading, Raymond thought he was cutting me out. Instead, he exposed himself. The board convened an emergency session 3 days later. I didn't yell. I didn't accuse dramatically. I presented numbers. Revenue declines masked by accounting shifts. Vendor contracts tied to his brother-in-law. Luxury vehicle leases filed under logistics expenses. By the end of the meeting, the vote was unanimous. Raymond was removed as acting director pending investigation. My cousins looked stunned. I looked calm, because this wasn't revenge, it was inevitability. Raymond called me that night. "You destroyed your own family." I stared at the city lights outside my window. "No," I replied softly. "You did." Within 6 months, Mercer Industrial Supply stabilized. We cut unnecessary contracts, restructured debt, recovered diverted funds. The company's valuation increased 23%. Employees who'd feared layoffs kept their jobs. Vendor trust improved. Raymond faced civil litigation. Not prison, but public removal. His name quietly disappeared from company letterhead. At the next annual shareholder meeting, I stood at the podium, not smiling, not gloating, just steady. Control isn't about power, it's about responsibility. Afterwards, one of the senior warehouse managers approached me. "Your grandfather would be proud." I nodded. "I hope so." A year later, Raymond tried to contest the trust amendment. The court upheld it unanimously. Turns out, Grandpa's lawyer was very thorough. The same lawyer who sat across from me at that will reading. He didn't know the full structure at first, because Grandpa had sealed portions under private instruction, only activated upon reading, which is why I smiled when my uncle said I wasn't in it. "Lawyer, you really don't know?" I did. Sometimes inheritance isn't money, it's foresight, it's patience, it's knowing when to stay quiet while others assume you're irrelevant. And the most powerful seat in the room is often the one no one notices, until it's too late.